Please, just leave me here." The voice was barely audible through the pounding rain, but Sofia Martinez heard it clearly as her white pickup truck's headlights illuminated the figure slumped against the brick wall of the downtown alley. She should have kept driving. Every instinct screamed at her to press the accelerator and pretend she hadn't seen anything. This was the kind of neighborhood where smart people minded their own business, especially at midnight during a thunderstorm. But Sofia had never been accused of being smart when it came to helping people in trouble. "Sir, you're bleeding." She rolled down her window, rain immediately soaking her black curls. The man lifted his head and Sofia's heart nearly stopped. Even through the darkness and rain, she recognized that face. Everyone in Chicago knew that face. Johnny Castellano, the most feared name in organized crime. The man whose mere presence could empty a room or fill a morgue. And he was staring at her with eyes that held more pain than menace. "You need to leave. Now." His voice carried authority even in weakness, but Sofia noticed how he favored his right leg, how his expensive suit was torn and bloody. Before I continue with this incredible story, I want to ask you to subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying this tale of unexpected love and dangerous choices. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I love connecting with listeners around the world, and if this story is already pulling at your heartstrings, hit that like button. Now, back to Sofia and Johnny in that rain-soaked alley. "I'm a nursing student," Sofia said, ignoring his command. "You need medical attention. What I need is for you to forget you saw me here." Johnny tried to stand but winced, his leg buckling slightly. Sofia made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She threw the truck into park and stepped into the rain. "Get in, I'm taking you somewhere safe." "Lady, you don't understand who—" "I understand you're hurt and bleeding in an alley during a storm. Everything else can wait." Her voice was firm, brooking no argument. Johnny stared at this woman who couldn't be more than 25, with kind eyes and a stubborn jaw, offering help to the most dangerous man in Chicago. In his world, such kindness was extinct. People helped Johnny Castellano out of fear, greed, or desperation, never out of simple human decency. "Why?" he asked, rain streaming down his face. "Because that's what decent people do." Sofia opened the passenger door. "Now get in before we both catch pneumonia." As Johnny limped toward her truck, he wondered if this angel in scrubs realized she was about to invite the devil into her life. Sofia's small apartment above the corner bakery smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, a stark contrast to the violence and blood that usually surrounded Johnny Castellano. He sat on her couch, watching her gather medical supplies with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "You don't ask many questions," Johnny observed, studying her carefully. Most people couldn't stop talking when they were nervous. Sofia worked in focused silence. "Questions can wait until you're not bleeding on my furniture." She knelt beside him, gently rolling up his torn pant leg. The bullet graze along his thigh was deep but not life-threatening. "This needs stitches." "I've had worse." Johnny's voice was steady, but he tensed when she cleaned the wound. Not from pain, he'd endured far worse, but from the gentleness of her touch. When was the last time someone had touched him without fear or ulterior motive? "I'm sure you have." Sofia's tone was matter-of-fact, not judgmental. "Doesn't mean we should let this one get infected." As she worked, Johnny found himself studying her face in the lamplight. High cheekbones, full lips, skin the color of café au lait. Beautiful. But it was her hands that fascinated him. Steady, careful healing, his hands destroyed, and hers restored. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Sofia paused in her stitching, meeting his eyes. "Should I be? Everyone else is." "I'm not everyone else." She resumed her work. "Besides, you're in no condition to hurt anyone right now." Johnny almost smiled. This woman had no idea who she was dealing with. Even wounded, he could kill her with his bare hands in a dozen different ways. But something about her calm presence made violence feel impossible. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sofia Martinez." She didn't ask for his name. Everyone in Chicago knew Johnny Castellano. "Sofia." He tested the name on his lips. "It means wisdom. And Johnny means God is gracious," she replied without looking up. Funny how names don't always match the person. This time Johnny did smile. This woman was full of surprises. "You think I'm lacking in grace? I think you're bleeding in my living room after midnight." Grace would be not getting shot in the first place. For the first time in years, Johnny Castellano laughed, really laughed. The sound was rusty from disuse, but genuine. Sophia finished the stitches and bandaged his leg efficiently. There. Try to keep it dry and change the bandage daily. You should see a real doctor. You are a real doctor. Or will be. Nursing student, she corrected. Different thing entirely. Johnny reached for his wallet, but Sophia shook her head. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? Sophia cleaned up her supplies, considering the question. For you to be more careful. Chicago has enough violence already. As she spoke, Johnny noticed the way she moved, graceful but tired like someone who worked too hard for too little. He noticed the stack of medical textbooks on her table, the bills piled beside them, the way she carefully saved even the smallest bandages. This woman had saved his life tonight, and somehow, Johnny Castellano found himself wondering if maybe she could save more than that. The next morning, Sophia arrived at Romano's cafe for her double shift, her mind still replaying the events of the previous night. Had she really stitched up the most dangerous man in Chicago in her living room? In the daylight, it felt like a surreal dream. Sophia, you look tired, called Maria, the other morning waitress. Late night studying? Something like that. Sophia tied her apron and grabbed her order pad, pushing thoughts of steel-grey eyes and unexpected vulnerability from her mind. Romano's was busy for a Tuesday morning, filled with construction workers grabbing coffee before heading to job sites and office workers rushing through breakfast. Sophia moved through her routine automatically, taking orders, serving coffee, collecting tips that would help pay for her nursing school books. She was refilling the coffee station when she noticed the black SUV parked across the street. Expensive, tinted windows, the kind of car that made smart people nervous. Sophia Martinez, a tall man in an expensive suit, had approached the counter. He wasn't asking for coffee. Depends who's asking. Sophia kept her voice steady, but her heart rate spiked. Name's Vincent. I work for Mr. Castellano. He wanted me to give you this. Vincent placed an envelope on the counter, and to thank you for your assistance last night. Sophia stared at the envelope like it might bite her. I don't want anything from him. He figured you'd say that. Vincent's smile was all predator. But Mr. Castellano doesn't like owing people. Consider it a gift for your medical supplies, nothing more. Before Sophia could respond, Vincent was gone, leaving only the envelope and the eyes of every customer in the cafe staring at her. In a neighborhood like this, being connected to Johnny Castellano was either the best protection or the worst curse you could have. With trembling fingers, Sophia opened the envelope. Inside was more money than she made in 3 months, along with a simple note in strong handwriting. For your kindness, J.C. Everything okay, Sophia? Tony Romano, the cafe owner, approached with concern. At 65, Tony had survived in this neighborhood by knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Seeing Vincent had clearly shaken him. It's fine, Mr. Romano. Sophia pocketed the envelope quickly. Just a misunderstanding. But it wasn't fine. Johnny Castellano now knew where she worked. He'd sent his people to her workplace. Everyone had seen. In the space of 12 hours, Sophia had gone from invisible nursing student to someone connected to the most dangerous family in Chicago. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you ever need anything, call this number, day or night. J. Sophia deleted the message immediately, but she couldn't delete the memory of his laugh or the way his eyes had softened when she'd bandaged his wound. She couldn't delete the fact that for just a few hours, the most feared man in Chicago had seemed almost human. The bell above the door chimed, and Sophia looked up expecting another customer. Instead, she saw Johnny Castellano himself, walking with only the slightest limp, looking completely different in daylight. Gone was the wounded man from last night. In his place stood someone who radiated power and control. He slid into a corner booth and picked up a menu, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Sophia grabbed the coffee pot and walked over, her legs feeling unsteady. "What can I get you?" she asked, falling back on professional routine. Johnny looked up, and for a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped. Just coffee, and a chance to properly thank the woman who saved my life. Johnny had owned Romano's cafe for 3 years, though Sophia didn't know it yet. Like many small businesses in his territory, Tony Romano paid protection money in exchange for safety and steady customers. What made Romano's different was that Johnny had actually eaten here late at night when the neighborhood was quiet and he could think. He'd noticed Sophia before last night. Hard not to. She moved through the dinner crowd with grace and efficiency, always polite, always professional. He'd seen her studying medical textbooks during breaks, seen how carefully she counted her tips. Johnny made it his business to know everything about everyone in his territory, but Sofia Martinez had remained an intriguing mystery. Now, sitting in her section with morning sunlight streaming through the windows, Johnny found himself seeing her differently. She poured his coffee with steady hands, but he caught the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided eye contact. "You're scared of me now," he observed quietly. "Should I be?" She echoed his question from the night before. "That depends on how well you can keep secrets." Sofia met his eyes then, chin raised with quiet defiance. "I've kept secrets my whole life, Mr. Castellano. One more won't kill me." "It might if you're not careful." Johnny's voice was serious. "What happened last night? If my enemies knew about it, they'd use you to get to me. Then maybe you shouldn't be here. Maybe not." Johnny sipped his coffee, studying her. "But I needed to see you again." "Why?" The simple question hung in the air between them. Johnny could have given her a dozen reasons. Gratitude, duty, protecting his investment. Instead, he told her the truth. "Because in 38 years, no one has ever helped me without wanting something in return." I needed to understand why. Sofia refilled his cup, her movements careful and precise. "Maybe you've been asking help from the wrong people." "Maybe I have." A construction worker at another table called for more coffee, breaking the moment. Sofia moved away to serve other customers, but Johnny could feel her awareness of him like electricity in the air. When she returned 20 minutes later, Johnny had made a decision. "Have dinner with me tonight." "I can't." "Why not?" Sofia gestured around the cafe. "I work 2 shifts, morning here, evening at the diner on 5th Street. Between that and nursing school, I don't exactly have time for social calls." "What time do you finish at the diner?" "Mr. Castellano." "Johnny." His voice was softer than she'd heard it before. "Just Johnny." Sofia hesitated, and Johnny saw the exact moment she decided to take a leap of faith. 11 o'clock. But I'm serious about not wanting anything from you. No money, no favors, no protection. I help people because it's right, not because I expect payment." Johnny left a 20 on the table for a cup of coffee, watching Sofia's eyes widen at the tip. 11 o'clock, he confirmed, standing to leave. "And Sofia, sometimes accepting help isn't about payment. Sometimes it's about letting someone return a kindness." As he walked to the door, Johnny caught Tony Romano's nervous glance and made a mental note to reassure the old man later. Tony was good people, the kind who minded his own business and treated his employees fairly. The last thing Johnny wanted was for his interest in Sofia to cause problems for her boss. Outside, Vincent was waiting by the SUV. "Boss, you sure about this? Getting involved with civilians? It's messy." Johnny looked back through the cafe window, watching Sofia work. She was laughing at something a customer said, her whole face lighting up. When was the last time he'd made someone smile like that? "Everything about my life is messy. Vincent, maybe it's time for something clean." Sofia's evening shift at Murphy's Diner on 5th Street usually dragged by slowly, but tonight every clock in the place seemed broken. At 10:45, she found herself checking her reflection in the restroom mirror for the 3rd time, wondering why she cared how she looked. This was a mistake. She barely knew Johnny Castellano, and what she did know should terrify her. The man was connected to every dark story whispered in Chicago's neighborhoods, the businesses that mysteriously burned down after refusing protection, the people who asked too many questions and suddenly disappeared, the violence that followed his name like a shadow. But she also remembered his laugh in her living room, the way he'd flinched when she cleaned his wound, not from pain, but from gentleness, the look in his eyes when he'd asked why she wasn't afraid. "Sofia, you've got a customer at table 6, called Charlie Murphy, the diner owner. Sofia glanced at the clock. 10:58. Her shift wasn't over yet. At table 6 sat Johnny Castellano, looking completely out of place in the working-class diner. He'd traded his expensive suit for dark jeans and a black button-down, but he still radiated an aura of controlled power that made other customers unconsciously give him space. "Coffee?" Sofia asked, falling back on routine. "Just waiting for someone." Johnny's eyes held a hint of uncertainty, as if he wasn't sure she'd actually show up. Sofia served her last few customers and counted out her register, hyper-aware of Johnny's presence across the room. Charlie Murphy kept shooting nervous glances at the corner table, clearly recognizing their infamous customer. "Sofia," Charlie called her over as she finished her closing duties. "Everything okay? That guy's been waiting for you, hasn't he? It's fine, Charlie. Just a friend. Charlie's weathered face creased with worry. I've been running this place for 30 years. Honey, I know who that is. You sure you know what you're doing? Sophia wished she could say yes. Instead, she squeezed Charlie's arm reassuringly and walked over to Johnny's table. Ready? He asked simply. Outside, Johnny's car wasn't the black SUV Sophia expected, but a dark blue sedan, expensive but not flashy. He opened the passenger door for her, a gesture so old-fashioned it caught her off guard. Where are we going? She asked as he pulled away from the diner. Somewhere we can talk without interruption, somewhere safe. They drove in comfortable silence through Chicago's late-night streets. Sophia found herself stealing glances at Johnny's profile, trying to reconcile the man beside her with the reputation that preceded him. His hands on the steering wheel were steady, scarred but careful. Everything about him suggested controlled power, but there was something else, a loneliness that called to her nursing instincts. Johnny pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that served late-night workers and insomniacs, not where Sophia expected a Mafia boss to take someone for dinner. Not exactly fine dining, Johnny said, seeming to read her thoughts. I prefer this. Sophia was surprised to realize it was true. More honest. They found a corner booth away from the handful of other customers. Johnny ordered black coffee. Sophia chose hot chocolate. It felt strangely normal, like a date between two ordinary people. Tell me about nursing school, Johnny said after their drinks arrived. For the next hour, Sophia found herself talking about things she rarely shared. Her dreams of working in pediatric trauma, the difficulty of balancing work and school, her fears about student loans. Johnny listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was genuinely interested. What about you? Sophia asked finally. What did you want to be before you became what you are? Johnny's smile was rueful. To her teacher, history specifically, I wanted to help kids understand how the past shapes the present. What happened to that dream? Life, family obligations, choices that seemed necessary at the time. Johnny stared into his coffee cup. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to disappoint my father. Sophia reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. The gesture was impulsive, pure instinct, but Johnny's reaction was immediate. He turned his hand palm up and intertwined their fingers. It's not too late, she said softly. It's never too late to choose who you want to be. Looking into her eyes, Johnny Castellano felt something crack open inside his chest, something that had been frozen for so long he'd forgotten it existed. Hope. 3 weeks later, Sophia's life had developed a rhythm that would have seemed impossible a month ago. Days at Romano's, evenings at Murphy's, late nights studying. But now, several times a week, those study sessions took place in Johnny's presence. Sometimes at the all-night coffee shop, sometimes in his surprisingly modest downtown apartment, always under the watchful eyes of his security team. Sophia had learned to ignore Vincent and the other men in expensive suits who seemed to materialize wherever Johnny went. She'd learned to recognize the signs of his business calls, the way his jaw tightened, how his voice became colder, more clipped. She'd learned not to ask questions about the meetings that took him away for hours at a time. What she couldn't ignore was how different Johnny became when they were alone. Away from his world of violence and intimidation, he was thoughtful, funny, surprisingly well-read. He helped her study for exams, explaining complex medical concepts with the patience of the teacher he'd once wanted to be. Tonight, Sophia was studying for her final exams when Johnny's phone rang. She watched his transformation, seeing the hardness settle over his features like a mask. I have to go, he said after a brief, tense conversation. Vincent will drive you home. I can take the bus. Sophia. Johnny's voice carried that note of authority she rarely heard directed at her. Vincent will drive you home. After he left, Sophia gathered her books and accepted the ride, but her mind was churning. The careful boundaries they'd maintained were starting to feel artificial. How long could they pretend his world didn't affect hers? The next morning at Romano's, Sophia got her answer. Sophia, honey, we need to talk. Tony Romano's face was drawn with worry as he gestured her into his small office behind the kitchen. What's wrong, Mr. Romano? I got a call this morning from the landlord. Tony's hands shook slightly as he poured himself coffee. He's doubling my rent, effective immediately. Sophia's stomach dropped. Can he do that? He owns the building. He can do whatever he wants. Tony's voice was bitter. 20 years I've been here. Built up a good business, never missed a payment, but now he says the neighborhood's changing, wants a different kind of tenant. That's terrible. But what does this have to do with... He mentioned you, Sophia. Said he knew about your friendship with certain people. Said it was making other tenants nervous. The truth hit Sophia like a physical blow. Her connection to Johnny was destroying Tony's business. The kind old man who'd given her a job when she desperately needed one was losing everything because she'd chosen to help a wounded man in an alley. Mr. Romano, I'm so sorry, I never meant... I know, honey, but sorry doesn't pay doubled rent. Tony sat heavily in his chair. I'll have to close by the end of the month. Can't afford to stay. Can't afford to fight. Sophia left work early, claiming illness. She needed time to think, to figure out how to fix this disaster. But when she arrived home, Johnny was waiting by her building, leaning against his sedan with the casual confidence of someone who owned the world. You look upset, he observed as she approached. Tony Romano is losing his cafe, Sophia said without preamble. Because of me, because of us. Johnny's expression didn't change, but Sophia caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, anger, resignation. I can fix that, he said simply. How? Are you going to threaten the landlord? Burn down his other buildings? Show him what happens when he crosses Johnny Castellano? If necessary. That's exactly the problem. Sophia's voice cracked with emotion. Don't you see? Your solution to everything is violence and intimidation. That's not fixing things, that's just moving the problem around. Johnny straightened, his mask slipping back into place. My methods work, Sophia. I protect what's mine. I'm not yours to protect, and neither is Tony Romano. Sophia felt tears of frustration building. I thought you were different. I thought maybe what? Maybe you wanted to be better than what your world made you. They stared at each other across an emotional chasm that felt wider than the few feet of sidewalk between them. Sophia saw the exact moment Johnny rebuilt his walls, shutting her out. This is who I am, Sophia. This is my world. I thought you understood that. I understood that you wanted to change. I was wrong. Sophia turned toward her building, but Johnny's voice stopped her. I'll handle the Romano situation. Quietly. No one will be hurt. Sophia didn't turn around. That's not the point, Johnny. The point is that your world destroys everything good it touches, including us. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Sophia could feel Johnny watching her go. But for the first time since that rainy night, she didn't look back. Johnny Castellano had built his reputation on never showing weakness, never backing down, never letting emotions cloud his judgment. So why was he sitting in his office at 2 a.m, staring at his phone and fighting the urge to call a woman who'd made it clear she wanted nothing to do with his world? Boss? Vincent knocked on the doorframe. The Romano situation. You want me to handle it? Johnny looked up from his phone. What would you do? Vincent seemed surprised by the question. In their world, the answer was obvious. Talk to the landlord. Make him understand that Mr. Romano is under our protection. Problem solved. And if he doesn't listen? Then we make the conversation more persuasive. It was the way Johnny had solved problems for 15 years. Clean, efficient, final. But now all he could hear was Sophia's voice. Your solution to everything is violence and intimidation. Set up a meeting with the landlord, Johnny said finally. But Vincent, we're going to try something different. The next morning, Johnny found himself in the unlikely position of sitting across from James Whitman, a nervous property developer who clearly expected to be threatened or bribed. Instead, Johnny had arrived alone, without Vincent or any obvious muscle. Mr. Whitman, I understand you're having concerns about one of your tenants. Whitman shifted uncomfortably. Look, Mr. Castellano, it's nothing personal. But having your people around makes other tenants nervous. It's bad for business. What would make it good for business? The question caught Whitman off guard. I'm sorry? Johnny leaned back in his chair, projecting calm rather than menace. You're a businessman. You want profitable tenants who pay on time and don't cause problems. Tony Romano has done that for 20 years. So what's the real issue here? Whitman's eyes darted around the coffee shop where they'd met. Neutral territory, public, safe. The neighborhood's changing. Property values are going up. I can get twice the rent from a boutique or upscale restaurant. And you think forcing out established businesses will help the neighborhood? I think progress requires difficult decisions. Johnny studied the man across from him. Whitman wasn't evil, just greedy and short-sighted. The kind of person Johnny usually handled with threats and fear. But Sophia's words echoed in his mind. Maybe you wanted to be better than what your world made you. What if I told you that keeping Romanos could be more profitable than forcing him out? For the next hour, Johnny found himself in the strangest negotiation of his career. Instead of intimidation, he used logic. Instead of threats, he offered incentives. He explained how established businesses attracted steady customers, how forcing out long-time tenants could create negative publicity, how working with community leaders was better than fighting them. By the end of their conversation, Whitman had agreed to keep Romano's rent at its current level in exchange for a modest investment in building improvements. No one had been threatened, no windows would be broken, no mysterious accidents would befall Whitman's other properties. It was, Johnny realized, the most satisfying business meeting he'd had in years. That evening, Johnny sat in his car outside Romano's cafe, watching Sophia work through the windows. She moved with her usual grace, but he could see the sadness in her shoulders, the way she avoided looking at the street. His phone buzzed with a text from Tony Romano. "Don't know what you said to that landlord, but he called this afternoon. Says he made a mistake, wants to work things out. Thank you." Johnny had done what Sophia asked, solved the problem without violence. But would she see it as proof that he could change, or just another example of his world interfering with hers? There was only one way to find out. Johnny got out of his car and walked toward the cafe door, hoping that the most important negotiation of his life would go as well as his meeting with James Whitman. But as he reached for the door handle, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb, and Johnny's blood turned to ice. He recognized those vehicles, knew exactly who they belonged to. Marco Volante had found him, and Sophia was directly in the line of fire. Sophia was refilling the coffee station when she noticed the change in the cafe's atmosphere. Conversations had stopped. Customers were quietly gathering their belongings and leaving money on tables without waiting for checks. Within minutes, Romano's went from busy dinner crowd to nearly empty. Through the window, she saw why. 3 black SUVs were parked outside, and men in expensive suits were positioning themselves around the building. This wasn't Johnny's security team. These men moved differently, more aggressively, like predators circling prey. "Sophia, get in the back now." Tony Romano's voice was urgent as he grabbed her arm. "What's happening? Just go. Lock yourself in the office and don't come out until—" The front door opened with violent force, slamming against the wall. 3 men entered, led by someone Sophia had never seen but instantly recognized as dangerous. Tall, silver-haired, with eyes like chips of black ice, he surveyed the cafe with the confidence of a man who owned everything he looked at. "Where is he?" The man's voice was cultured, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "I don't know who you mean," Tony said, but his voice shook. "Of course you do. Johnny Castellano. He's been spending quite a bit of time here lately, along with his new interest." The man's gaze found Sophia across the room. "Miss Martinez, isn't it?" Sophia's blood turned cold. How did this stranger know her name? "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I'm just a waitress." "Just a waitress." The man smiled, and Sophia had never seen anything more frightening. "Who stitches up bullet wounds and has late-night coffee dates with the most wanted man in Chicago?" Before Sophia could respond, the cafe door opened again. This time Johnny walked in alone, his hands visible, his posture relaxed but alert. "Hello, Marco." Johnny's voice was calm, conversational. "You're looking well for a man who's supposed to be dead." Marco Volante. Sophia now understood who this was. Johnny had mentioned the name in hushed conversations with Vincent, always followed by words like rival and dangerous and unfinished business. "Disappointed to see me breathing, Johnny?" "Honestly, a little surprised. Last I heard you'd developed a fondness for fire and weren't very good at avoiding it." Marco's laugh was like breaking glass. "Reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated. Unlike yours will be." The remaining customers had fled, leaving only Sophia, Tony, Johnny, Marco, and 6 armed men in the increasingly claustrophobic space of the cafe. "This is between us, Marco," Johnny said. "Let everyone else go." "Everyone else isn't my concern." Marco's eyes never left Johnny. But Sophia felt the implicit threat. "Although I do find your choice in companions interesting. A nursing student. How wonderfully domestic. Leave her out of this." "Oh, but she's already in it, isn't she? The moment she decided to help you, she became part of our world. There's no going back from that." Sophia saw something she'd never seen before in Johnny's eyes. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. And in that moment, She understood the impossible position he'd been trying to navigate. Every moment they'd spent together had put her in danger. Every kindness she'd shown him had painted a target on her back. "What do you want, Marco?" "The same thing I've always wanted. You dead. Your territory. Your businesses. Your reputation." Marco gestured around the cafe. "And now, the pleasure of taking something you actually care about." Johnny's calm facade finally cracked. "Touch her, and You'll what? You're outnumbered 6-1. Your backup is blocks away, and Miss Martinez is standing very close to some very impatient men." Sophia felt the walls closing in around her. This was her fault. If she hadn't helped Johnny that night, if she hadn't gotten involved with him, none of this would be happening. Tony Romano would be safe. She would be safe. But looking at Johnny now, seeing the desperation he was trying so hard to hide, Sophia made a decision that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. "Mr. Volante," she said, stepping forward, "what if I made you a better offer?" Marco raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Johnny for me, simple trade. You let him walk out of here alive, and you can have whatever revenge you want against me for helping him." "Sophia, no." Johnny's voice was sharp with panic. "Don't do this." But Sophia was already moving, placing herself between Johnny and Marco's men, using her body as a shield. For the first time in weeks, she was thinking like the nursing student she'd trained to be, assessing the situation, finding the solution that would save the most lives, even if it cost her own. "Never." "How touching," Marco Volante said, his voice dripping with mock sentiment. "The little nurse wants to play hero, but you misunderstand the situation, my dear. I don't want Johnny dead quickly. I want him to suffer first, and what better way than watching someone he cares about pay for his sins?" Sophia felt the trap closing around them, but she kept her voice steady. "You're right about one thing, I am just a nurse. Killing me won't hurt your reputation or eliminate a rival. It'll just make you a man who murders innocent women." "Innocent?" Marco laughed. "You stopped being innocent the moment you chose to help this monster." Behind her, Sophia could feel Johnny's tension like a coiled spring. She knew he was calculating odds, looking for an opening, preparing to do something heroic and stupid that would get them both killed. "There's something you should know," Sophia said, buying time. "About that night I found Johnny." "Sophia." "Don't." Johnny's voice held a warning, but she ignored him. "He was running from you, wasn't he, after you tried to kill him at the warehouse?" Sophia was guessing, piecing together fragments of conversation she'd overheard. "But he wasn't just wounded. He was poisoned." Marco's expression shifted slightly, surprise, then interest. "The bullet graze was nothing," Sophia continued, "but the poison on the blade that cut him, that was what really hurt him. He would have died in that alley if I hadn't helped him." "Fascinating," Marco said. "And your point?" "My point is that I saved his life once, which means, in your twisted logic, I'm responsible for everything he's done since then. Every business deal, every territory expansion, every move against your organization. Technically, that's my fault, isn't it?" Sophia saw understanding dawn in Marco's eyes, followed by something that looked almost like respect. "You're trying to make yourself a bigger target," he realized. "Draw my attention away from him to you. I'm trying to tell you the truth. If you want to hurt Johnny Castellano, really destroy him, then you're going about it wrong." Marco studied her with new interest. "Enlighten me. Killing him is quick. Killing me in front of him is crueler but still final. But keeping me alive, threatening me, using me as leverage, that's a wound that never heals." The cafe fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerators and the distant sound of Chicago traffic. Sophia could feel Johnny's shock radiating from behind her. She was essentially volunteering to be Marco's prisoner, his weapon against the man she'd grown to care about, but she was also betting her life on reading Marco correctly, that his cruelty was calculated rather than mindless, that he would see the strategic value in her proposal. "You're offering yourself as a hostage," Marco said finally. "I'm offering myself as insurance. Johnny stays in line, doesn't interfere with your business, and I stay safe. He steps out of line." Sophia let the implication hang in the air. Marco was quiet for a long moment, considering. Behind her, Sophia could hear Johnny's breathing, sharp and controlled. "There's just one problem with your plan," Marco said. "I already have everything I need to destroy Johnny Castellano." He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward with a tablet computer. On the screen was security footage from the warehouse where Johnny had been injured weeks ago, but this wasn't footage of the attack. It was from earlier that night. showing Johnny in what appeared to be a business meeting with several other men. "Do you know what this is?" Marco asked Sophia. She shook her head, but Johnny's sharp intake of breath told her it was significant. "This is your precious Johnny meeting with FBI agents," Marco continued, "discussing terms for turning state's evidence against my organization. Your wounded angel is an informant, Miss Martinez. He's been feeding information to federal agents for months." Sophia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She turned to look at Johnny, searching his face for denial, for explanation, for anything that would make sense of what she'd just heard. What she saw instead was confirmation in his eyes, and something that looked like relief. "Is it true?" she whispered. Johnny met her gaze steadily. Yes. In that single word, everything Sophia thought she knew about Johnny Castellano, about their relationship, about the choice she'd made to trust him, crumbled to dust. And Marco Volante's triumphant smile told her that her desperate plan had just become completely worthless. Tastuona, the silence in Romano's cafe stretched like a held breath. Sophia stared at Johnny, trying to process what she'd just learned. The man she'd been falling for, the man she'd risked everything to help, was an FBI informant. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely audible. 8 months, Johnny replied. "Since they arrested my younger brother on drug charges and offered me a deal." "Your brother?" Sophia remembered Johnny mentioning family, but never in detail. "Dante, 22 years old, just out of college, got mixed up with the wrong people, started dealing to pay off gambling debts." Johnny's voice was steady, but Sophia could see the pain in his eyes. He was looking at 15 years minimum. The FBI offered to reduce his sentence to 2 years if I cooperated. Marco laughed coldly. How touching. The big bad Mafia boss brought down by brotherly love. "So everything between us." Sophia struggled to find words. "Was that just part of your cover? Get close to the innocent waitress to make yourself look more sympathetic?" "No." Johnny's response was immediate and fierce. "Sophia, what happened between us was real. The investigation, my work with the FBI, that had nothing to do with you. Didn't it?" Sophia's voice was rising. "You've been lying to me for weeks. While I was falling for you, you were secretly working to destroy people in your own world, people who trusted you, people who deserved to be destroyed." Johnny shot back. "Marco's organization runs drugs through elementary schools. They force teenage girls into prostitution. They kill anyone who gets in their way, innocent or guilty. Was I supposed to protect that? You were supposed to tell me the truth. I was supposed to keep you safe." Johnny's control finally cracked. "Do you have any idea what would have happened if anyone suspected our relationship, if they thought you knew about my cooperation with the FBI?" Sophia looked around the cafe, at Marco's armed men, at Tony Romano cowering behind the counter, at the shattered normalcy of her life. "You mean like what's happening right now? This is exactly what I was trying to prevent." Marco cleared his throat, drawing attention back to himself. "As fascinating as this lover's quarrel is, we have business to conclude. Miss Martinez, your noble sacrifice is no longer necessary. Johnny's value as a hostage is considerably diminished now that his cover is blown." "What does that mean?" Sophia asked. "It means," Marco said, pulling a gun from his jacket, "that both of you have outlived your usefulness." The next few seconds happened in slow motion. Johnny moved toward Sophia, trying to shield her with his body. Marco's men raised their weapons. Sophia heard Tony Romano shouting something from behind the counter, and then the cafe windows exploded inward as federal agents rappelled through the glass. "FBI, everyone on the ground!" The narrow space erupted in chaos. Marco's men spun toward the new threat, shouting in Italian. Johnny tackled Sophia to the floor behind an overturned table. Gunfire echoed off the walls like thunder. Through the noise and confusion, Sophia heard Johnny speaking urgently into his phone. "This is Eagle. Package is secure. Repeat. Package is secure. Eagle," his code name. Even his name had been a lie. When the shooting stopped, 5 of Marco's men were dead. Marco himself was wounded but alive, hands zip-tied behind his back as FBI agents read him his rights. Tony Romano was unharmed but in shock, and Sophia was sitting on the floor of the destroyed cafe, staring at the man she'd thought she loved. "Sophia." Johnny reached for her, but she pulled away. "Don't." Her voice was hollow. "Just don't." Agent Sarah Chen, the FBI handler Johnny had been working with, knelt beside Sophia. "Ms. Martinez, you're safe now. We're going to need to debrief you. But first..." "Debrief me?" Sophia looked between Johnny and Agent Chen. How much did you know about me? The pause before Agent Chen answered told Sophia everything she needed to know. We've been monitoring Mr. Castellano's activities for several months. When his patterns changed, when he started spending time with you, we had to investigate. You've been watching me. We had to make sure you weren't part of his criminal organization. Sophia laughed, a sound with no humor in it. And what did you decide? That you're exactly what you appear to be, a nursing student who made the mistake of helping the wrong person. Sophia stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. Around her, the cafe that had been her second home was destroyed. Tony Romano's life's work was in ruins. And the man she'd trusted with her heart had been lying to her from the beginning. Sophia, please, Johnny said. Let me explain. You already did. Sophia picked up her purse from behind the counter, stepping carefully around broken glass and overturned chairs. You saved your brother. You brought down the bad guys. You were one of the good guys all along. Then why do you sound like you hate me? Sophia paused at the door, looking back at Johnny one last time. Because good guys don't use people. They don't lie to people who care about them. They don't put innocent people in danger just to maintain their cover. As she walked away from the wreckage of Romano's cafe, Sophia heard Johnny calling her name. But she didn't look back. She couldn't bear to see the man she'd fallen in love with disappearing behind the federal agent he'd always been. 2 weeks later, Sophia was working her final shift at Murphy's Diner. The Romano's cafe was closed indefinitely. Tony had decided to retire and move to Florida with his daughter rather than rebuild. Sophia didn't blame him. Some things, once broken, couldn't be repaired. Charlie Murphy approached her table with coffee and the tired expression of a man who'd seen too much in his 60 years. You sure about this nursing job in Portland? He asked. It's a long way from Chicago. That's the point. Sophia had found the position through her school's placement program, pediatric trauma at a children's hospital. Everything she'd dreamed of. It was also 3,000 miles away from Johnny Castellano and the ruins of her old life. What about that fellow? The one who... There is no fellow, Charlie. Sophia's voice was firm. There never really was. The bell above the diner door chimed, and Sophia looked up automatically. Her heart stopped. Johnny Castellano stood in the doorway, looking nothing like the confident Mafia boss she'd first met. He wore simple jeans and a sweater, his face unshaven, his eyes holding an exhaustion that went deeper than physical fatigue. Charlie Murphy muttered something under his breath and retreated to the kitchen, leaving Sophia alone with the man she'd been trying to forget. Johnny slid into the booth across from her without being invited. You're leaving, he said. It wasn't a question. How did you... Sophia began, then stopped herself. Of course he knew. He probably knew her flight number and seat assignment too. So the FBI offered you protection, new identity, relocation assistance, but you turned it down. I don't need protection from men who are already in prison. You need protection from me. Sophia met his eyes then, seeing something raw and broken there. No, Johnny, I needed honesty from you. I needed trust. I needed you to treat me like a partner instead of a liability. I was trying to keep you safe. You were trying to control the situation, just like you always do. Sophia's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. Do you want to know what hurts the most? It's not that you lied to me. It's that you never gave me the choice to make my own decisions. Johnny was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than usual. You're right. About all of it. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the table between them. This is my formal resignation from the FBI, effective immediately. Sophia stared at the envelope. Why? Because working undercover meant lying to everyone, including you. Because I've spent so many years pretending to be someone else that I don't know who I really am anymore. Johnny's hands were flat on the table, and Sophia could see scars she'd never noticed before. Because I want to find out who Johnny Castellano could be if he wasn't afraid all the time. And you think quitting the FBI will do that? I think Portland has good universities. I think a man with my background could get into a graduate program in education if he applied himself. Johnny's smile was tentative, hopeful. I think maybe it's not too late to become the teacher I always wanted to be. Sophia felt her careful walls beginning to crack. Johnny, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for another chance. Johnny stood up, leaving the envelope on the table. I'm telling you that meeting you changed me. That loving you made me want to be better than what my world made me. And whether you're in my life or not, I'm going to spend the rest of it trying to be worthy of what you saw in me. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Sophia, everything I felt for you was real. Everything I told you about wanting to be different, about finding something clean in my messy life, that was the truth. After Johnny left, Sophia sat alone in the diner for a long time, staring at the envelope. Charlie eventually approached with the coffee pot. Want to tell me what's in there? Sophia opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was Johnny's resignation letter, dated that morning. Underneath it was something else, a handwritten note on simple paper. Sophia, I know I can't undo the lies or the danger I brought into your life, but I can promise that the man who laughed in your living room, who helped you study for exams, who fell in love with your kindness, that man was real, he still is, and he's going to spend the rest of his life trying to deserve the gift you gave him. Love, Johnny. At the bottom of the note was an address in Portland and a simple line. If you ever want to see what a former Mafia boss looks like grading high school history papers. Sophia wiped her eyes and looked out the diner window at the Chicago street where she'd built her life. Tomorrow she would fly to Portland to start over. The question was whether she would be starting over alone. For the first time in 2 weeks, Sophia wasn't sure of the answer. 6 months later, Sophia was reviewing patient charts in the pediatric ICU at Portland Children's Hospital when Dr. Martinez, no relation despite the shared last name, approached her workstation. Sophia, there's someone here to see you. Says he's a teacher. Sophia's heart skipped, but she kept her voice professional. Did he give a name? John Castellano. He's waiting in the family conference room. Sophia took a deep breath and made her way down the hall, her mind racing. She hadn't seen Johnny since that night at Murphy's diner, though she'd thought about him more often than she cared to admit. Portland was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to build a life free from the complications of loving a dangerous man. But Johnny wasn't dangerous anymore. Was he? She found him standing by the conference room window, looking out at the Portland skyline. He'd changed. His hair was longer, he wore wire-rimmed glasses, and his clothes were the casual attire of a teacher rather than the expensive suits of a crime boss. But it was more than superficial changes. He carried himself differently, more relaxed, less like a man constantly watching for threats. Hello, Sophia. Johnny turned when she entered, and his smile was uncertain but genuine. Hello, Johnny. Or should I say, Professor Castellano. Just Mr. Castellano for now. I'm student teaching at Roosevelt High. 10th grade world history. Johnny's pride was evident. Turns out teenage students are almost as ruthless as organized crime figures, but considerably more honest. Despite herself, Sophia smiled. How did you find me? Portland's nursing community is smaller than you'd think. Plus, I figured you'd end up somewhere helping kids. Johnny gestured around the hospital. You always talked about pediatric trauma. Are you happy here? Sophia considered the question. The work was challenging and rewarding. She'd made friends among the nursing staff, found a small apartment in a neighborhood that reminded her of home. She was building the life she'd always wanted. Yes, she said simply. I am. What about you? I love teaching. Johnny's face lit up. Who knew that 15-year-olds would find the Medici family fascinating? Though I may have edited some of the more violent details. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at the city where they'd both come to rebuild their lives. Why are you here, Johnny? He reached into his jacket. Sophia no longer flinched at the gesture and pulled out a newspaper clipping. This was in the Chicago Tribune last week. Sophia took the clipping and read the headline, Former Crime Boss Testifies in Federal Corruption Trial. The article described how Johnny's testimony had led to convictions in a major case involving police corruption and organized crime. They're calling you a hero, Sophia observed. They're calling me a lot of things. Hero is one of the nicer ones. Johnny took off his glasses and cleaned them nervously. The point is, it's over. All of it. Marco Volante was sentenced to life without parole. His organization is dismantled. The FBI doesn't need my testimony anymore. So you're free. As free as a former criminal can be. Yes, Johnny put his glasses back on. Which brings me to why I'm here. Sophia waited, her heart pounding. I'm in love with you, Johnny said simply. I was in love with you when I was lying to you. I was in love with you when I walked away from you. And I'm in love with you now that I've finally figured out who I really am. Johnny, let me finish. I know I have no right to ask for anything from you. I know I hurt you, lied to you, put you in danger. But I also know that what we had was real, and I don't think either of us has forgotten it. Sophia looked at this man who had turned his life upside down, who had walked away from power and money and danger to become the person he'd always wanted to be. The man who had driven 3,000 miles to find her. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you believe people can change. I'm asking if you think a former criminal can become someone worthy of loving a woman like you. Johnny stepped closer. I'm asking if you'd be willing to let me spend the rest of my life proving that the man you saw in me that first night is the man I really am. Sophia thought about the wounded man she'd found in the rain, about the laughter in her living room, about the gentle way he'd helped her study. She thought about the lies and the danger and the betrayal. She thought about the choice between safety and love, between protecting her heart and taking a chance on something extraordinary. I have conditions, she said finally. Hope flared in Johnny's eyes. Anything. No more lies ever. Not small ones, not big ones, not lies of a mission to protect me. Agreed. No more violence. If someone threatens us, we call the police like normal people. Agreed. And if this doesn't work out, if we can't make it past what happened in Chicago, you don't try to fix it with grand gestures or dramatic speeches. You just accept it and move on. Johnny nodded solemnly. Agreed. Sophia stepped closer, close enough to touch the face she'd been trying to forget for 6 months. And one more thing. If you're going to be in my life, you're going to be all the way in it. No holding back parts of yourself, no protecting me from who you used to be. I fell in love with Johnny Castellano. All of him, including the broken parts. Johnny's hands came up to cover hers, where they rested against his cheeks. I can do that, he whispered. Can you? Instead of answering, Sophia stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was a kiss that tasted of second chances and new beginnings, of forgiveness and hope, of two people who had found their way back to each other through lies and danger and heartbreak. When they broke apart, Johnny rested his forehead against hers. I got a job offer, he said quietly. Roosevelt High wants me to stay on as a full-time teacher next year. There's a small apartment above the bookstore on Morrison Street, walking distance from the hospital. It has good light for studying, and the landlord allows cats. Cats? Sophia laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought maybe we could start with something small and work our way up to bigger commitments. Sophia kissed him again, and this time it felt like coming home. Outside the conference room window, Portland stretched out beneath them. A city full of possibilities, a place where a former crime boss could become a high school teacher and a nursing student could heal more than just physical wounds. They had both traveled a long way from that rainy night in Chicago, but sometimes the longest journey is not across miles, but across the space between who you were and who you choose to become. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find someone willing to make that journey with you. In the end, Sophia and Johnny learned that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections fit with yours, whose broken places heal alongside your own, whose choice to be better tomorrow makes you want to be better too. 6 months later, in a small ceremony attended by Sophia's nursing school friends and Johnny's teaching colleagues, they exchanged vows that included promises to be honest, to be brave, and to choose each other every day, even when it's difficult. And on quiet evenings in their apartment above the bookstore, when Johnny graded papers and Sophia studied for her nurse practitioner degree, they would sometimes look at each other and marvel at how a chance encounter in a Chicago alley had led them to this life they never could have imagined. Love, they discovered, truly can transform even the most broken things into something beautiful.